What's up, everybody? So, today I wanted to talk about something that a lot of people have been asking me about via text, email, and in person. And that's going to be how I got a 4.0 in college as a Division One athlete and a double major. So, what I'll do in this video is start out by talking about some of the strategies I learned, some of the tips and tricks that I learned in my 4 years, and then I'll go into discussing a few of the classes that I took, kind of go through my transcript a bit, and point out some areas where I struggled, point out some areas where I really dodged a bullet, and just, some basic tips for the generals classes that I took. And then finally, I'm going to offer some reflections on my experience, and hopefully, this video will help out a lot of you. I know that people in high school are nervous about going to college, nervous that their study skills may not transfer over, but I'm going to point out where some of mine did, some of mine didn't. And then I know a lot of people are in college struggling, so hopefully this video and the things I learned can help you out to increase your GPA, reach your academic goals, and so on. So, a little bit of background, I graduated from a mid-tier Division One NCAA program, but a mid-tier school, state school, and I was double major in economics and philosophy. So I'll be pursuing my PhD in the fall, but nothing special. So with that in mind, let's start out. So one of the basic things that I do is I have a specific note-taking strategy. Now, this is going to vary with each class, but there are some general points that I'd like to mention. First of all, generally speaking, I don't use my computer to take notes, and I did this all 4 years. I actually really go out of my way to do that because for me, writing the notes down, whether it be on an iPad or a piece of paper, helps me to ingrain the information better. Now, again, there are a few classes that I needed to use my computer because there was a little bit of information overload and I had to get a ton of it down, but that's going to be the exception rather than the norm. So the second thing I did starting my sophomore year that greatly helped, and it may sound a little bit over the top, but rest assured, it really helped me, was to color coordinate my notes. This was absolutely crucial for my mathematics and my economics classes. So what I did was use black ink for my standard notes, blue or green for my examples, and then red for my extra thoughts. And so let me kind of unpack what that means. So when I was in class, I'd write down the definitions, everything in black, and then I would use the examples that we did. I would write those in blue or green, just depending on the pen that I have. And then when I reviewed my notes, anything that I missed or anything I wanted to add that came to me, I would write in red. And what this did was it allowed me to be more organized, but it also allowed me to go back when I was studying for an exam and really pinpoint the areas that I had a weakness in or the areas I just wanted to focus in and hone a little bit more. But again, this is going to vary with each class. Maybe in English or something like that, it won't work as well. But in econ and mathematics, it helped greatly. Now, the second strategy that I used, not for note taking, but just in general, was really taking advantage of office hours and emailing. And my goodness, did this help. I remember freshman year, I didn't really go into office hours, and it was difficult because I had to kind of relearn information, talk to kids in class. To be honest, I think I was just nervous. But I finally started going into my American government class near the end of freshman year a little bit. I started talking to the professor, and he was really nice, helped me out a ton on my papers, and then ever since then, I've been taking full advantage of the professor's time in office hours and really going in there with a specific set of questions, saying, hey, I need help here. Can you help me out? Let's work through this. Not only does that help you to learn from somebody who studied this and loves the subject, but it also helps you to develop connections. So in class, you're not going to be as nervous if you have a question or something. Again, I know with the COVID stuff, office hours was difficult. So I did some emailing and I would email. So for example, my econometrics class, I would email my professor pretty much after at least one time a week, just with a few general questions I had, clarifying concepts, honing in those ideas. And that helped to develop a connection just between her and I where I could go in after class, I could stay after, or I could go in before, get some help on the homework. And it made me really appreciate the subject more because the professors are going to have a passion for it. And it's a lot of fun hearing their wisdom. So I would seriously recommend doing that. Now, the third strategy is to not skip class. And I seriously emphasize this one. Don't skip class. The reason why is twofold. One, you're going to have to make it up at some point, either on your own or in missed problems on the test. And that just doesn't benefit you at all. And two, it's a lot more difficult to teach yourself the information. I trust me on this one. I've done it before. I did it in high school. I was a terrible student in high school, and I tried to teach myself the information and it just didn't work. The professors have PhDs, they love the subject, they know what they're doing, they're there to help you. Go to class, listen to them. And the fourth tip is kind of related to that, and it's going to be to just bring the heat to every class that you're in. I know they're long, they're an hour and a half. I actually had a 3-hour course one time, it was once a week. But I'm telling you, just get the coffee, get the energy drink, and sit there, put the phone away, put the computer away, and just focus. If you can put in a dedicated hour and a half of focus time there, you're going to remember the information, you're going to do better on the tests, it's going to be easy to recollect when you're studying for all the exams. Just trust me on that one. Bring the heat to every class period. Now, I also have 3 more tips for the people who are a bit more extreme and who really want to push for that 4.0 or something like that. Now, these 3 strategies I kind of developed later on. So this would be junior and senior year in college. And I would have never guessed. So these just came from me figuring it out on my own. But the first one is going to be pre-studying. This one is pretty extreme. So I actually did this for every single philosophy course that I took. And what I would do is I would look at past syllabi, or I would email the professor before the class started, and I would ask simply, hey, what are we going to be doing? What thinkers are we going to be covering? What topics are we going to be discussing? What assignments, like just general stuff, like do we have a large final project that I can start to think about, etc. And so then what I would do is I would just do a general overview of the stuff we would be doing in class. So for example, I took an aesthetics course my junior year fall. In the summer beforehand, I just got an intro book on aesthetics and just flipped through it, 20, 30 minutes a day max to familiarize myself with the context of the discipline and the language that is used within the discipline. I did the same thing for logic. I took a bunch of logic classes in college, and I would do problem sets, not often, just a little bit, 1 a week maybe in the summertime to prepare for that class. Now, the next extreme strategy that I used was to look at the syllabus very closely. And this, it doesn't sound like it's something that is an extreme strategy or something like that, but I'm telling you, the devil is in the details. And the syllabus is going to be your best friend or your worst enemy. A lot of teachers, I've had teachers hide things in the syllabus, like an extra credit assignment. It happens. I've had due dates sneak up on me. If I wasn't looking at the syllabus constantly, I wouldn't be prepared and I probably wouldn't have gotten a 4.0. But the other thing I want to point out is to look at the syllabus and pre-plan what you're going to be doing. So for instance, the last semester of college, I had a modern philosophy course, and I know we had a final project due. And what I did was I pre-planned just a couple general topics I'd like to explore and potentially pursue in that final project. And that helped me greatly because it simply helped me to familiarize myself with the course material. It helped me to get comfortable and to really have a focus and a purpose during classes. And the third extreme strategy is to really aim to know the material better than the teacher, or if you want to phrase it a different way, master the course material. This is the key to success in college. You want to master the course material. And let me unpack what I mean by this because I think it's often misunderstood. So let's take a concrete example here. When I would go into my logic course, a lot of the kids would just go through the motions, do the practice sets, look in the back of the book for the answers, the usual stuff. When it came to the exams, this killed them. We actually had a very, very high fail rate in that class, even though it was an intro logic course. And the reason why is because the test is going to have problems that you didn't do in your practice sets and you didn't do in class. The test is supposed to be a test of mastery over the material that you've learned. You're supposed to take the concepts that you learned and apply them to new challenging situations. So to deal with this, what I had to do was master the material in class and then push my thinking to try to apply it to other situations which I had not yet encountered. This was difficult, but it was worth it. And it's really going to be up to you to decide how to do this. It's going to be up to you to decide whether or not you need to go to the teacher and ask for extra problem sets. But I seriously recommend having that goal of mastering the material, and don't go into the test without having mastered the material, or else you're not going to get an A, most likely. Now, with all that stuff in mind, I would say that those strategies formed the core of my success in college. So why don't we take a look at my transcript, and I'll point out some of the other tips and tricks that I used, some of the courses where I really struggled in. So I would say that one of my hardest semesters was definitely my first semester in college. And I was a terrible student in high school. I didn't try. I cheated on my homework. It was one of those things where I just didn't want to be there. I hated school. But when I came to college, I made it a goal to just get the highest GPA that I could. And I actually in high school had a 2.0 GPA in mathematics courses. So when I was encountering calculus in my first semester of college, I was terrified, to say the least. But one thing that really helped me get an A in this calculus course was to focus again during every class period, but also tutor other students. So I noticed students who would struggle in the class, and I'd be like, hey, you want to exchange phone numbers? Let's get together before the exams. Let's just grind out the study guide together, and I'll explain to you what's going on. Now, this was absolutely huge. It helped me to master the material that I was saying, and I could explain it to another person. If you can explain the course material in a clear and concise manner, you're well on your way to mastering it. So that is one of the big reasons why I got an A in calculus. The other courses that I took my freshman year, I took micro and macroeconomics, which were fairly easy. It just has a lot to do with paying attention, doing the homework, going in for help. I wouldn't say I used any specific strategies there except the ones that I outlined. Composition 1 and 2 were a bit difficult because I remember actually walking in to my Comp 1 class on the first day and my teacher telling the whole class to forget everything that we learned in high school about writing. To me, that was a relief because I hated the Jane Schaefer method, which we used in high school to write essays. And so hearing that was a big relief to me. There was a lot more freedom in college writing, and you have to learn to deal with that. So you're going to have to learn to improvise. You're not going to be as structured in your essays. By that, I mean you're not going to have a teacher telling you what to do in paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on. You're going to really have to learn how to write on your own. And so I developed multiple writing styles that I'm actually going to talk about in a future video. So I learned how to write in a blog format, research papers, polemical writing, etc. About 5 or 6 different styles. And I really stress going to your teacher in office hours and asking for help on how to write. That's going to really help in your comp classes. So the other courses that I took freshman year were fairly easy. I took environmental science, which just go to class for those science courses. You're going to really have to read the textbook. I stress reading the textbook heavily. That helped me in all of my science courses. Let's see. So sophomore year fall was also very difficult for me. I mentioned the intro logic course that I took where I had to master the material. I took that sophomore year fall. I took intermediate microeconomics. That was another course where I developed a slightly different strategy for note-taking. And what I did is I used note cards. So I went through my note-taking strategy that I outlined above, but I would use note cards to study while I wasn't in the library at my desk, when I was, in the car or something. I would have practice problems and key definitions written on note cards. And this was the semester where I played the entire fall for golf. I played college golf, as I mentioned. I was an athlete. And I would take the note cards on trips with me. So while we were just waiting around, maybe at a restaurant or something, I would just flip through a few of them to ingrain that material. That was big because some classes are heavy on memorization. Economics isn't so much, but there are definitely some parts where you have to know key definitions, have to know problems and how to do them. So I know for the people in nursing, in STEM, there's a lot of flashcard work, a lot of memorization, a lot of PowerPoint slides. I heavily stress carrying those flashcards with you and just flipping through them every once in a while. When you're sitting in line at the food, to get food, when you're just hanging out with your friends, just take them out, flip through them a little bit, refresh it. Exposure and repetition is going to be your best friend to learning the material. So then, spring of my sophomore year, I took a statistics course, which again, just went through the basic motions with the note-taking. I took contemporary moral problems, which was quite interesting. I think now that I look at this, I should probably do a video separately on philosophy courses because those are radically different than anything that I've ever taken. And the prep work and the coursework is going to be quite different, the way you simply approach that. So I'll leave that for another time. But I took intermediate macroeconomics, and again, the same thing. I color-coded my notes. I went over them time and time again. That course, I actually filled up 2 entire notebooks, spiral notebooks with notes. And one of the big things that I did there was really, really grind out practice problems before the exams. We had tests every week, and we had exams once every 4 to 6 weeks. And so what I did is I sat in the library with one of my friends in the class, not to socialize, which is what a lot of people unfortunately do there, but to hone in our mastery of the material. So we would write out practice problems for each other, not knowing what the other person was going to write, and practice those new problems and try to apply our concepts to those problems. That helped extremely well. I was one of 4 or 5 people to get an A in that course. So then I took a summer course that summer going into my junior year, I took a summer course, which I would recommend. They're not that difficult. They're compressed. You just have to do the work. And then in the fall of my junior year, I took my aesthetics course, which I mentioned before, and an independent study on symbolic logic, where we went through sentential logic, predicate logic, and a bit of modal logic. And that course was tough. I had to pre-study for that, which I mentioned before. And I would recommend that, especially if you're taking any philosophy course, pre-studying a bit is going to help you greatly. So spring of my junior year was fairly easy, but this was when COVID hit and I had a bit of a blunder, which I'm going to talk about, hopefully so you guys don't make the same mistake. I took a graduate/undergraduate split economics course without knowing it. And at this point, I had shifted my career focus into becoming more philosophically minded, so I wanted to pursue PhD in philosophy, didn't want to do that much with econ anymore. And so I didn't know I was in this course. And at the time, I had a death in the family, a really bad breakup, and COVID hit, and I was really struggling with my golf game. So everything was crashing in on me at once, and this course and I were just not getting along. I ended up withdrawing from it. Now, a withdrawal is not going to hurt your GPA. It's the only one I've had on my transcript. All it does is go on your transcript as a W. And that's it. It's not a fail. It's nothing. There's no impact on your GPA. All it is a withdrawal. And if anybody asks, I have my reasons why. I just didn't want to be there. I just wasn't jiving with the course. I didn't have any need for it. I was going through a lot of personal stuff. So I would recommend you guys to look into withdrawals and that withdrawal deadline because it may just save you. So then the other thing I did was my language course. I had to take 2 semesters of French, or really any language, but I chose French. And unfortunately, the teacher or the professor at my university had a 60% D withdraw or fail rate. And my advisor was terrified because she had only had negative experiences with this professor. So what I did was I took this course as a pass. So all I had to do was get above a C and I would have just a pass. Now I know a lot of people who do this. It seems like cheating at first, but I assure you it's not. For at universities, what you can do is take a course as a pass slash fail, or a pass slash no credit, it's technically called. And this will allow you to it will save you from a lot of stress, because, and I think you can only do this with courses that don't directly count toward your major. So I couldn't do this with a philosophy or econ course. I could only do this with electives. So what this did, and I ended up getting A's in both of the classes, low A's, like 92.5s, but what it did was it really saved me during finals week and throughout the whole semester from that anxiety. It was just a huge burden. I actually got to enjoy the class, learn a lot, connect with the kids and the professor, had a great time learning about French culture and learning the French language. But that pass slash no credit just saved me from the stress and anxiety. So I'd recommend looking into that. As for my senior year, pretty simple stuff. I did another independent study. I pre-studied for all my philosophy courses, and that was it. I didn't really have any difficulties. Probably the hardest course would have been that independent study and my econometrics course, which is economic statistics. But other than that, I didn't have a problem. And I ended up doing really well in all the courses, secured that 4.0. So with all that in mind, let's return back to the last thing I would like to discuss, and that would be my reflections on my experience. You guys all may ask me, was this worth it? Was it worth it to sacrifice so much of my time, especially as a young person at a university when I could be out having fun or working a job or something else? Was it worth it to grind for this 4.0? The answer really depends on what else you'd be doing with your time. So if you'd be just partying, then I would say that it would not be worth it to sacrifice your GPA. If you're going to be working a job, starting a business, perhaps. But I will say this, there's a really, really big difference between the effort required to get a 3.5 to a 3.9 and to get that 4.0. I would recommend that my studying was about I would say that and estimate that my studying was about 4 to 8 hours every day, including on weekends, which comes out to about an average of like 40 hours a week or so, give or take a few. So I also estimate that I could have gotten a 3.7 to a 3.9 for about 90% less work than I put in for that 4.0, which equates to like 30 hours around that saved, give or take again. So I would say that if you're going to use those 30 hours to do something amazing, like start your own business, something like that, go for it. For me, I wanted to get the 4.0. I wasn't going to do anything else, and so I really wanted to push myself. It took a lot of work, but overall, I'm pretty happy with it, and I'd recommend that if you are a high school student who wants to pursue a 4.0, you can do it. It takes a lot of work, but you can do it. And if you use these strategies, it's going to help you quite a bit. Also, if you're a college student struggling right now, try applying these strategies for a couple months, maybe a whole semester, see how they work. I guarantee you that they're going to improve your GPA, and who knows, they might even allow you to study a subject that you turn out to love. You might go on to grad school and pursue it. But with all that in mind, I think it's good place to end here. So if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. If you like the video, go ahead and like and subscribe. Thanks.